For decades, Iran and Israel have been locked in what's called a shadow war. It's a conflict fought behind the scenes, with proxies, assassinations, and cyber attacks. But that's all changing. Right now, that shadow war is threatening to burst out into the open, and it could pull the entire world into a direct and honestly, a devastating confrontation.
Okay, so to get a real sense of just how close we are to the edge, let's walk through a scenario that our sources have laid out. And look, this isn't some kind of science fiction movie plot. It's a chillingly plausible future that analysts are taking very, very seriously. And it all kicks off with one single massive attack.
Just try to picture this for a second. A coordinated strike, codenamed Operation Epic Fury, successfully takes out Iran's supreme leader. Well, the response is immediate and it is furious. Tehran unleashes this absolute barrage of missiles and drones, and they're not just aimed at Israel, but at American bases all across the Middle East. Within hours, the death toll is already in the thousands. It's a horrifying thought, right? And the scariest part? It's not fantasy. This is a potential future built on a foundation of very real escalating hostility that's been brewing for decades.
So the big question is, how did we get here? How did we get to this precipice? To really understand the danger we're all in today, we've got to rewind the clock and take a look at how this incredibly bitter rivalry even started.
This timeline, it really lays out the key turning points. Everything kicks off in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution. It completely flips the script, replacing a pro-Western monarchy with a fiercely anti-Israel Islamic republic. Allies basically became enemies overnight. From that point on, Iran starts funding proxy groups to fight its battles indirectly. Now, there was a brief moment of hope in 2015 with the nuclear deal, but that all came crashing down when the US pulled out in 2018, putting everyone right back on this collision course.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. It's all about how Iran has chosen to fight this fight. They knew they couldn't match Israel or the US in a straight-up conventional war, so they had to ask themselves, how do you fight a much, much stronger enemy? And their answer was a totally different and, frankly, a very effective strategy.
It's a strategy they call forward defense, and the idea behind it is pretty simple. Fight your enemies far away from your own home. It's a clever move, really, born from knowing their own military weaknesses. The goal isn't to win some big head-to-head battle, it's to create this painful buffer zone, to make any direct attack on Iran itself just seem way too costly for its enemies to even think about trying.
And this photo right here from Yemen, it's the perfect picture of that strategy in action. You're seeing a supporter of the Houthis holding up pictures of both the Houthi leader and Iran's supreme leader. This is it. This is the axis of resistance, a whole network of allies and proxies that gives Iran incredible reach and influence all across the Middle East.
And these groups, they are the pillars of that whole strategy. You've got the incredibly powerful Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis down in Yemen, militias in Iraq and Syria. All together, they form what our sources call a multi-layered deterrence ring. Every single one is a tool that lets Iran strike its enemies without ever really leaving its own fingerprints on the scene.
So that's Iran's playbook. But you know how it is. For every strategy, there's always a counter-strategy. So let's flip the coin and look at how Israel and the United States are responding, because their doctrine is just as deeply ingrained.
You see, for Israel, this is not just about who has more power in the region. Our sources make it really clear. They see Iran as an existential threat. That means they view Iran's nuclear ambitions and that ring of proxies we just talked about as a direct danger to their nation's very survival.
And here we get to the absolute heart of the matter, this fundamental clash of doctrines. On one side, you have Iran using its proxies to keep all the threats at arm's length. And on the other, you have Israel and the US who believe that the only way to be safe is to strike first, preemptive action. It's a strategic deadlock, where each side's defensive moves are seen as an act of aggression by the other. And that is a recipe for disaster. Which brings us right back to where we started. Because when two opposing strategies like these finally collide, the fallout isn't going to be neatly contained to just the Middle East. No, the shockwaves will be felt all across the globe.
So, you might be thinking, why does a conflict happening thousands of miles away really matter to me? What would it actually mean for my wallet, for global stability, for the rest of us?
Well, the sources, they paint a pretty grim picture. Vital shipping lanes could be shut down, which would cause absolute chaos for global trade. Energy markets would go wild, sending gas prices soaring. And a firestorm like this could easily pull in neighboring countries and even crank up the tension between global powers like the US, China, and Russia, who all have major stakes in the region.
And for Iran itself, their greatest fear is something our sources call Syrianization.
It's a really powerful term for a country that's just completely shattered by war. Not just defeated on the battlefield, but totally broken apart by civil strife and foreign meddling. And this fear of total collapse is a massive driver of everything the regime does.
And all of this leaves us with one final, very sobering question. For years, all sides in this conflict practiced what they called strategic patience, basically taking hits to avoid an all-out war. But it really looks like that patience has run out. With every drone strike, with every cyber attack, this shadow war is stepping out into the light. And we all have to ask, have we already passed the point of no return?